Okay, so I was born into a Catholic family. I'm a cradle Catholic. I went to parochial school through high school. And growing up, nobody cared about evolution. My family, my dad worked downtown at a loan office, and there was a tradition that every Thursday night he would bring home some beer, and he and my mom would stay up talking in the kitchen until late hours. And when we got old enough, we kids would stay up and talk too, and would talk about politics, and would talk about music, and would talk about sports, and anything was fair game. But the idea of evolution never came up. No, we just didn't register with us because I don't think it was an issue with Catholics, at least in the United States. And I remember in school, in high school, we were taught biology and we were taught about evolution. I don't think anything extensive. And we were taught that, God made the universe and God made life, and he could do it any way he wanted to. Who are we to tell him otherwise? And the best guess right now is Darwinian evolution, and this is how life came about. That was okay with me. What do I care? I was devout. I came from a devout family, and this didn't ruffle my faith whatsoever. And all through college and graduate school, evolution was just assumed, and I assumed along with it, and I was kind of a theistic evolutionary kind of guy, but without the deep thinking that's involved in that, or any thinking whatsoever. And I remember as a postdoc, I was a postdoc at the National Institutes of Health near Washington, D.C., and I shared a small laboratory space with another postdoc who was also a Catholic, and her brother was a priest, and she was active too. And one day we were talking about, what's needed for an origin of life? How did life get started? And she says, of course you need DNA, you need some genetic material. And I said, yeah, but you need proteins, DNA is not going to do anything. She says, yeah, but you need a membrane too to keep it all. Yeah, but you have to have metabolism too. And we stopped and looked at each other and said, nah, can't be done. But then we laughed and just forgot about it, turned away and did our work. We figured, I guess, somebody else would figure it out, but it didn't interest us. And that was my attitude. I just didn't give a thought to the topic until I was at Lehigh University. I was an associate professor about 5 years into my academic career, and I read a book called Evolution, a Theory in Crisis by a man named Michael Denton, who was a geneticist and medical doctor, and at the time he was an agnostic. And he didn't care about the theology or anything. He was just mad that Darwinists claimed so much for their theory, and he saw a lot of problems for it. And reading the book, I read about problems I had never heard about before, never thought about. And yet here I was, a tenured professor in biochemistry at a good college, and when I closed the book, I got mad. I was mad because I thought I had been led to believe something, not because there was strong evidence for it, but simply for sociological reasons. That's what you're supposed to believe these days. And after reading Denton, he didn't really emphasize biochemistry itself, and I'm a biochemist. And in biochemistry, you study systems that are phenomenally complex, these molecular systems, some of which I've shown. And up until then, kind of like my discussion with my fellow Catholic postdoc, I assumed that somebody else had explained how they would evolve. But then after reading that book, I said, well, who has explained this? And I decided I would look up the papers where some of the complex systems would be discussed. I didn't expect maybe complete explanations, but I thought, some people would be working on it, making some progress. And I went to the science library, into the journals where scientists publish their work, and I was astounded to see that there was nothing had been published on complex systems. It was all assumed. You'd read a paper on the most marvelous system, and at the end you'd get a sentence about, isn't it wonderful what evolution has produced? And no, it's not. But from that time on, I said, I want real evidence. I want real experimental results that really indicate that this could have happened. And the more I looked, it was clear that it wasn't. This was all a facade. It's all a Potemkin village. It was it was settled 100 years ago, before DNA was discovered, before all sorts of things. That was the attitude that you were expected to take, even though the evidence was not there. And at least in my case, if you look at the flagellum, and if you look at the blood clotting cascade and the other complex molecular systems, intracellular transport and so on, if you have reason to doubt Darwinism, it takes you maybe 5 or 10 minutes to decide that, no, this had to have been designed. Because you see the purpose behind it, the strong purpose, the many different parts that come together for this purpose. And so that was the beginning of my career. And I kind of got involved in intelligent design serendipitously, because after reading the Denton's book, I was really angry. I put it down on the shelf. I was braced and walked around, and I walked down the halls of the department at Lehigh, and there was some poor colleague, walking around, kind of looking at the posters on the walls. I said, hey, I just read this book. He said, yeah, that's nice. And he would kind of walk away and smile. And so it wasn't very effective, but kind of serendipitously or providentially, I fell in with with bad companions, with a man named Philip Johnson and William Dembski and Stephen Meyer and other folks, and got involved in the intelligent design movement. And let me just say that, those many years ago, in the late 80s now, I guess it was about 35-ish years or so ago, I thought Darwinism was wrong, and my conviction about that has only gotten much, much stronger as I've heard replies from Darwinists when they were challenged, as new scientific results have come in, as science has advanced by leaps and bounds. It's becoming stronger and stronger. The conclusion of intelligent design is coming stronger and stronger. And I must say that one odd idea I have is that I think that that intelligent design will be recognized by science eventually. Not because of anything we have done, not because of anything anybody here has written or said, but because that's where the data is leading. And the more you know about nature, the more strongly it's pointing beyond itself to a mind outside of nature. And you cannot forever deny the data. But it's kind of like the fall of the Berlin Wall and the Soviet Union. You can't predict when something like that will happen, but it's got to happen eventually.